our House Majority Leader, Representative Brian Winkler, who has been spearheading the battle in the House and doing a great job taking that issue around the state and really gauging from the community, from our public at large, and vetting ideas and concerns and really demystifying the perceptions of cannabis. And I would say I just came from a trip, a business trip to Colorado, business meeting, legislative trip, and I didn't see the sky falling in the state of Colorado. And I know that that was one of the first state that's passed legislation and followed by many others. And we can learn a lot from these states and frameworks. And I think it's about time that we bring that conversation to an end and start regulating in a responsible way with all stakeholders involved. And with that, I just want to say thank you for inviting me and supporting this conversation. It's going to be a long path. We just had a brief panel this morning with some of the leaders of the Republican Party who said that there was no room for legalization this session. But I would say it takes two to tango, and you have a House, and the House controls a lot of the debate in this particular legislative session. So I'm excited to be partnering with Representative Winkler and also with the governor, who has been, Governor Walz has been a vocal supporter of cannabis legalization. And finally, I also sit on the cannabis medical cannabis task force, and we fought really hard to get flower into the program and laid that foundation. And finally, we can say that we've achieved that, and that is going to be rolled out here shortly in the state. And I'm glad that we're able to do something for patients for the cost that they incur to have a substance that actually improves their lives and helps them in ailments and pain and so forth. So with that, I'll pass it on to, who is my next speaker?
I think you're introducing Majority Leader Winkler.
Well, there you go. I just did that.
That's
then. So with that, Representative Winkler, thank you for doing all the hard work and the heavy lifting without much support from the other side, but certainly on the right side on this issue. So we're lucky to have you and really appreciate your support with that. And you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Lopez-Franson, and thanks to all of you for being here to support the people who will make cannabis legal in Minnesota if they win this next election. I'm excited to have such stellar partners here, and I don't know who's all in the speaking program, but Senator Murphy and I were elected for the first time together in 2006 in the State House. Senator Bingham and I were elected that same year. We all came in as one. I'm still stuck in the House, and they've moved on up to the Senate, but we go back pretty far, and these people know how to get bills passed. They know how to get an agenda done when they have an opportunity to do so. And there is, almost no chance, I think, that we can get this done without Senator Lopez-Franson as the Senate Majority Leader, and with these wonderful people as chairs, and of course, future Senator Dr. Borrud as a member of the Minnesota Senate. We need to make that happen too. So it is wonderful to see so many of you. I feel like it's sort of like high school graduation or a high school reunion. We've spent so much time together for a couple of years, 15 stops, 12 committee hearings, your constant engagement, not only providing feedback, but helping to organize and spread the word and so forth. So I know that as much as legislators will be the ones who vote to pass this into law, you are the ones who made it possible through your advocacy over the years, through your engagement. You are the ones who have made this a possibility. It's also really encouraging to me to see Governor Walz today announcing, it's not an announcement of his support. He has long supported legalization. But what he did today was present a plan that was largely based on House File 600, the bill that we created together. And there may be some differences, and I have not had a chance to examine it closely, but it is my understanding from the governor's office that they did their best to model their bill off of House File 600, which is a bill that is so far reflective of the will of the broader community and your advocacy. Those things are aligning very well. I think just as a heads up, kind of what we think will happen this session, the bill is good. It is not perfect. And so Paul Cummings and my team, who has been the leader on the staff side, will be engaged this session in trying to solicit more feedback for the major portions of the bill, kind of in large buckets. So we're going to ask you to take a look at it, to provide your review and comment and see how we can make it better. And I'm hoping to do the same thing with Senate DFLers. This has been a House project that, because we had to get the bill passed, we needed to find 68 votes. It was necessarily a House project. But for this to be successful, the Senate DFL Caucus also needs to be deeply engaged in making the bill their own. And so we are hoping to engage DFL senators in that process, and Republicans if we can get there. But without really thoroughly engaging senators, it will be hard to get this bill passed. And so that's another project that we have for this session. Finally, in terms of session priorities, we have two other issues coming up. Number one is the need to address the CBD issue after the Loveless decision and some rather arbitrary enforcement decisions by the Department of Agriculture. I think we're going to be able to pull together a bipartisan, bicameral proposal to address that and make sure that Minnesota hemp producers and other CBD producers are not fenced out of the marketplace because of strange state laws. So I think we should be able to do that. No promises at the legislature, but it seems likely. And then the other thing is we are going to see a proposal to use a state compact process to expand the number of medical licensees to include tribal governments. Specifically, White Earth and Red Lake are interested in getting in on this business, and they're going to be working together. They may have a couple of different proposals, but the idea of expanding the medical program to include them as producers and distributors is something that likely will come up this session. And I don't know if we'll get a resolution with that from Republicans or not, but that will be a topic. So we have a lot of cannabis work, a lot of work related to hemp, and a busy session coming up. And again, your involvement, your advocacy, and your commitment to the issue is what will see us through. And I think there's an exciting opportunity to keep making progress this year. And I think we just need to find a way to keep the momentum going. And that's what I'm going to try to do. So I don't know if I'm passing it off. If so,
you're passing it off back to me. So I will just make remarks about why we have the House, right? And we need the Senate to flip in order to have the trifecta that is necessary to pass this. Unfortunately, this has become a political issue, legalization of cannabis, even though we have some allies on the other side, and they're just hard to come by, or sometimes hard to deflect from their own side and team. But on this issue, it affects a lot of Minnesotans. Actually, it affects all Minnesotans when it comes to people stuck in the criminal justice system for lower infractions of possession of cannabis, whether it's people having records because of those infractions, and then having a hard time getting a home and rental or banking for their business or their own mortgage or even a job. So these are issues that affect each and every one of us. And when we had this discussion earlier this morning with the panel of leaders from the House and Senate, in the majority and in the minority, I said point blank that this was one of the issues that I wanted to see. And if we couldn't do it, I'd be even open to put it on the constitutional amendment just to get the public involved, because that's where we are. We want this to happen. The response from the Republicans was not this year, not now. And it's lacking the moment and the urgency that people have to get this done and to start not only addressing those disparities and issues of inequities in the criminal justice system, but also what we need to do to make sure that we have equity when we implement legalization for licenses, for production, and to really make it an industry that we all thrive in and are able to benefit from, not just the big corporations and big corporate interests, but that it actually has this notion of having equity back into those communities that were most affected by the war on cannabis. So we need your help to flip the Minnesota Senate, and we have a great team. Just yesterday, we announced record fundraising numbers for this season, but then we are expecting to have to raise twice or maybe 3 or 4 times the amount of money that we announced. So we need help, and it's not all about financing, but it's a big portion of it because it allows us to then be able to hire the team that we need to knock on those doors, to help us with messaging, to help us pay for those literatures that we're going to put out there. And one of the messages is cannabis, right? So we have to educate the public, and we do it door to door, and we have to do it with your help. And we have had great partners with the people that are here on the panel and supporting this event. But we also need support from the public as well. You might know that we have a Pcr program. That is a program where you provide $50 in an individual or $100 a couple. And if you do that for us, you are able to get a receipt and you're able to get that money back. So that is a great way to help us. It doesn't cost you anything, only a few moments of your time. And I would say that our staff in the Senate DFL Caucus can even help you fill out those forms, make sure you do it correctly and get those that money back. So we just need you to take the time to do it so we can add on to our arsenal and finance, and also be able to get the people boots on the ground to flip the Minnesota Senate in 2022 in November. So that is no small task, and it's going to take all of us. So that's the urgency. And just to go back to when the bill was in the Senate, I had a Republican co-author who is now running for governor. So that is former Senator Scott Jensen, who claimed to be on this side, but then changed his mind. So I don't think you're going to see cannabis legalization with him. And it should be an election issue question for those candidates, and frankly, for all of legislative races, which are all up this cycle. So I can't restate enough the urgency that we have this election cycle. The session starts on Monday. The work has already started months ahead to gear up for Monday and for the cycle of the election, because we have a great team. And with that team, we also have a great campaign chair with Senator Erin Murphy, who is no stranger to politics and is helping us lead the way and attract great candidates who are, some of you are here, like was mentioned, hopefully the future Senator Alita Baroud, and we'd love to have more of you step up to the plate and help us flip the majority, even flip the Senate into the majority. Even if you're not a candidate, but supporting candidates like Alita will also go a long way. So without further ado, Senator Erin Murphy can talk a little bit more about the campaign.
Thanks, Leader Lopez Franson. It's really good to see you this evening. Thank you, Leader Winkler. It was nice to hear you talk about our coming in together, the three of us, you and me and Senator Bigham. And it's really good to see Alita from Rochester with us tonight. I know you were at the steps of the Capitol earlier today talking about healthcare, and I'm really glad that you're here demonstrating your support for this important policy this evening. I've had the good fortune of campaigning all across the state of Minnesota, and it is the case that it is Minnesotans and the way they think about issues that help us move issues under the dome of the Capitol. And in my 10 years serving, both in the House and now in the Senate, I've watched people's perspective on the issue of legalization of cannabis change significantly. And it is in large part because of the work of the people in this group and the people who have been with you, raising the issue, pricking our consciousness about why it is important that we step away from prohibition, and we recognize the harm and the disparities that have come from a policy that is no longer serving us well. So for many reasons, the legalization of cannabis is time, and Minnesotans are ready for the move all over the state of Minnesota. The only thing that's really in our way right now is an entrenched Senate Republican majority. And we need to win three DFLers to win seats and hold the seats that we have in order to gain a governing majority in the Minnesota Senate and to move this policy. We know that there were some games played in the last election cycle in recruiting third-party candidates that represented the cannabis parties in order to try and block DFLers from winning seats. but all that did was delay the passage of this necessary legislation. Many people across the state of Minnesota have done tremendous work to get us to this point. I was the majority leader in the House when we passed medical cannabis, and I remember how hard that was to move that piece of legislation, and it served Minnesotans very well, people who need the assistance of medical cannabis. It's not a perfect piece of legislation, and legalizing cannabis will help those people. It will end the prohibition that is no longer suited to our times, and it eliminate the disparities that people have experienced as a result of a law that is no longer serving Minnesota well. So just as Leader Lopez Franson said, we need your help. We need your help to win those 3 seats, to earn that governing majority in the Minnesota Senate, and to continue the work that you are doing right now to move Minnesotans along on this issue, so that we can put this policy into place when we earn that governing majority in the next election in this November. So thank you very much for including me tonight, Leader Lopez Franson. Thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for your leadership on this issue. It's so early before I was in the Senate with you, and for breaking the way so that we can move together on this policy for the state of Minnesota. And with that, I think it is my job to turn it over to our colleague, Senator Nick Frentz.
I know Senator Frentz is driving right now, but do you want to say a few words, Senator?
Well, I just wanted to say safety first in our traffic laws. Thank you, Aaron. Thanks everybody for coming. Greetings from somewhere about 30 miles southwest of Windham, Minnesota. I'm very glad to see the group come together, and we have a fairly vibrant pro-cannabis constituency down in the Mankato, North Mankato area, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you. And with that, I'll turn it back to someone who can turn their camera on.
Thank you so much, Senator. We will pass it off to Senator Bigham.
Thank you very much. First man, class of 2006, representing today. It is great to be here today with everybody, and I just want to thank Leader Lopez Franson and Leader Winkler for their leadership on this issue. 2 champions of social justice and just doing what's right for Minnesotans, meeting Minnesotans where they're at. And the job of Leader Lopez Franson is to make sure that Minnesota knows that the Republicans in the Senate are obstructing this. And today I had the honor of being on a panel with the Minnesota Bar Association, the Agriculture and Rural Chapter, with Representative Aisha Gomez, another champion of social justice and on this issue. And we talked about the Loveless decision, and you should know that, and I believe Leader Winkler alluded to this, we are going to have a bill to fix that. It's having a huge impact economically and for consumers, for people that need this product, much like myself, for injuries and for pain management and inflammation. This is really where it's the right thing to do, to have people have choice over how they manage their own health decisions. And I just really think that we need to continue to let people know that this is a priority for both of the bodies in the Democrat in the House and the Senate. And we appreciate everybody being here today. We need your help to flip the Senate so that we can make this a reality. And I appreciate everybody's promotion of the medicinal marijuana program. I have Leafline Labs, or what's formerly of Leafline Labs now, in my district. And I also have Minnesota Hemp Farms in my district, largest hemp farm. And I know Leader Lopez was down there with me a couple of years ago, touring that too, to promote that. And I'm on a bill with Senator Murphy about making sure that hemp can be used for livestock, because this is about economics and the importance too of entrepreneurship in this industry as well. So as you can see, there's a lot of reasons to do it, besides obvious the social justice reasons. And I'm proud to be part of this team. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for supporting us, and we appreciate it, and we need you all. Thank you.
Awesome. So we are going to go ahead and open it up for a little bit of Q&A now. So we would like to open it up to anybody who's participating tonight to go ahead and raise their hands. or unmute themselves and go ahead and ask a question. You can also throw it in the chat and I can read them out.
I see Alita Baroud has a question. Go ahead.
I would really like more discussion to understand exactly what the Loveless decision was all about. And then also what the remedies are, you know, the legal remedies are that could be passed in the legislature.
Absolutely. So in 2019, we passed conformity, if you will, with the federal law related to our industrial hemp program. And what I'm going to call a more likely oversight drafting error, it measured THC to the amount of the dry weight. Well, we all know that CBD doesn't really even come, it doesn't come like that. It's in tinctures, or it's in gummies, or it's in oils or balms. And there was a case, individual was charged with possession of that. It was upheld as basically being in possession of marijuana. And the case was upheld by, he was convicted, his conviction was upheld on the appellate court, and now it's being moved to the challenge to the Minnesota Supreme Court. Don't know yet if they're deciding to hear it or not. So the fastest thing we can do is fix it. Representative Gomez and I basically have a very technical change, which is to add to the existing law that tetrahydrocannabinol is included in the current law. So there is no ambiguity or issues with that. The economic impact is that a lot of merchants and shops are women-owned. And so it's disproportionately impacting them economically, but also, again, as I said, consumer driven. We need to make sure that people are knowing what's in the product, but that they have access to it and they're not doing something illegal that we know is legal due to federal law. And so it's kind of like on a technicality with this Loveless decision. So hope that answers your question, Alita.
Thank you.
Looks like Lily S has a question.
Can you hear me okay? I hope so.
Now we
Hi
can.
there. My name is Lily. I'm speaking through an interpreter through VRS, just so you're aware. Thank you so much for hosting this. I was wondering, do you have any plans or procedures in place to for people to vote on the bill itself? Republican Senate, I mean, is that something that's in the works? What's the status of that about voting on the bill?
Hi, Lily.
Hopefully that made sense.
I just want to repeat back your question. This is Erin. Are you asking about whether there would be a vote on this proposal in the Minnesota Senate in this session?
Thank you for clarifying. I'll clarify as well. Meaning that the Senate, Republicans in the Senate are considering proposing and letting Minnesotan people vote on legalization of cannabis?
Thank
Is
you.
that something that would happen?
So there has been talk over a number of years about the value of putting this question right to the voters by putting it on the ballot. Early, people talked about doing that because they believed it might be a way to motivate voters to engage in the election. And more recently, I think it has been a way to talk about moving the issue and engaging Minnesotans further in the debate. In Minnesota, you need to move a constitutional amendment, that question, to get it onto the ballot through both bodies. And I don't believe at this point that the Minnesota Senate would allow that question to go to the ballot. I think that they appreciate that that would not support their efforts in this next election. And while I think it is right, it would be right as one path to take this question to the voters. It is probably going to be more expedient at this point to win the next election and to actually legislate this issue for the people of Minnesota, because Minnesotans have made it over the years clear that they support this policy.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Marcus.
Hi, sorry, I was muted. So I know we're not going to get full legalization until we get a full Democratic control of the legislature. But and I heard that, there's consideration of including Red Lake and White Earth as producers and distributors. But is there any talk of like further diversifying the medical market until we can get full legalization? Increasing the number of retail licenses. And thanks for doing this event.
Yes, thank you, Marcus. And I remember our hearing where you testified as well back in the Senate. That is a question. The problem is the Republicans are really resistant to anything having to do with any changes in the medical program or even touching legalization. The fact that we got flower into the program was heroic effort by and partly by groups like these, like you all, that put the pressure on of how disproportionate the pricing is for even folks that want to have access are priced out. And so it's not real market, to your point of only having a certain number of licenses. And we should improve upon the medical program. When we passed it back in what year was that? It was it was the most restrictive legislative proposal when it comes to medical cannabis, and we've been improving upon it every year. There's certainly so many more improvements that we should be making. And the fact that we only have two licenses, and what if one of them is not able to produce, then you have a monopoly. So we have issues intrinsic already in the design of the program, but it was the program that we're able to pass at that point. I think the sense or the reception by the public and the outcry has changed and shifted to a support of the medical program. So we just need more legislators to actually be able to work across party lines to fix it. And I saw in the chat there was a talk about how this all started with the Republicans of using cannabis as a tool for the war on drugs, and now they're finding out that it's shifting, and that the public opinion on this issue is completely different. I mean, we're treating cannabis worse than other potent substances, illegal substances, and it's quite frankly, I mean, you all know this, it's less lethal, if you will, than alcohol. Like it has less impact on your body and than alcohol, and we legalized alcohol a long time ago. So the purpose of us putting pressure on legalization, it actually helps us move the needle on the cannabis, on the medical program, because they know that we have to improve upon it. And the Republicans are now okay with the medical program, if you will. So they're willing to make some changes there. So we'll work with your advocacy groups to put the pressure on what that next fix will be asking for this session. But looking forward to working with all of you to continue to improve that program, because it's by far not perfect.
Lily, go ahead.
Yes, hi. You can hear me? Oh, perfect. Thank you. Hi, Lily here again. I have a question. I don't know if you'd be able to give me some more information or to expand on saying that the medical program isn't perfect. Are there discussions on what is needed? So what does that look like? What is not perfect, and where do you go from there?
Thank you, Lily. And when I'm saying perfect, I don't know if we'll ever get to perfect, but because every program has its risk and issues, right? But we decided to put the medical program under the Office of or under Department of Health, and that also is a tough. There was other ways that we could have done it. We could have done it its own office, or not under the Department of Health, where there's some friction there sometimes with the use of cannabis. And now that we're pushing for the expansion of legalization, we need to really understand when we create an agency or another program like legalization, where does it get housed under what department or what agency that's going to give oversight. So at first it might have seemed like a good idea, but as we're trying to continue to manage it, we've learned lessons from where we initially put the program in, but we had it very restrictive with the 2 licenses. I don't know what the number of licenses would be optimal, but certainly opening it up to the market, and to have producers and distributors that are not that could be more diverse, because right now one of the licensee holders got sold out. So we want to make sure that this program is not set up for only the rich and powerful can get access to our market and benefit from it. Many of them have put a lot of investment, but I think it's time for us to explore expanding those licenses to the point that we open it up to more competition in a state. And that's going to be something that's going to be really hard, because like I said, the initial licensees put a lot of investments there. But I think to be a sustainable and more diverse ecosystem, we need more diversity of players in our system of how from inception from producer to distribution is very much under control of one player. So those are things that we need to address and adopt and change. And there's not a lot of appetite for that. Better keep it than break it. If it's not broken, don't fix it. But we have made some progress on lowering the cost. The other big one that I think we all agree on is that veterans want to have access to cannabis, and they want to be able to partake and use it for their ailments after they've served. Many of them have benefited from cannabis and are unable to do so legally. So legalization at the federal level would actually help our veterans, but we can start by doing it at the state level. And they're actually a big advocate and push to legalize in Minnesota and to allow for their use. I hope that answers the question.
Leader Franson, Lopez, this is Jim Erickson. One observation on the discussion about House File 600 versus the public amendment process. It would be my observation that it would be harder to get the Republicans to put it on the ballot than to pass 600. That will be true, but the last thing they want to do is bring people to the polls to vote on it. So that's almost a non-starter. On the question of the medical marijuana companies, I saw that Maren Schroeder is on the call. She knows as much about it as anyone. So I would call on her to answer Lily's question and discuss that perspective. As we know, both of those 2 companies have a number of folks at the legislature, so they will be players, and we're interested to see what they're going to want. But I'd call on Maren Schroeder to give her perspective. Maren?
By all means, Maren, she's taught me a lot.
Well, here we go. I was going to try to keep my mouth shut tonight. If you guys don't know me, I'm Maren Schroeder. I'm the policy director for Sensible Change Minnesota. We have been talking and starting the work on a bill to remove the limitation on the number of medical cannabis manufacturers and try to keep it Minnesota owned. I can't tell you what the success rate might be on that. I need to have some conversations with some of the senators on this call Senator Lopez Franson, that was our call this morning. But I think it's time. These two companies have a combined $8 million in losses over the last 7 years, 8 years. There's no good way to get another manufacturer up and running within the next 12 to 18 months. And so I think that they have plenty of time to make their money back, catch up from those losses. There was a deliberate decision to invest in Minnesota's market with a 2-license duopoly. And now that we are going to see our patient numbers increase substantially with the addition of flower, as well as a piece of legislation in drafting to lower the registration fee for patients, I don't see any reason why anyone on either side of the aisle would oppose opening it up for the benefit of patients.
All right, it looks like there is a question in the chat from Tanner. Let's see if I can read it out here. There were a number of compromises previously made in the passage of our state's medical program, such as the conditions allowed and the number of dispensaries/producers. Does the DFL leadership see a similar situation happening in terms of adult use with changes made to appease specific interests? Or is the DFL caucus pretty set on the general framework of the previously introduced measure? And to follow up, I can repeat this too. If there were to be compromises, have you heard any ideas floated by more liberal GOP elected officials that could gain support?
I would say the original framework of having it opened up and making sure there's equity embedded is still where we are headed. We haven't heard of different proposals, but we'd love to have more Minnesota grown businesses and people, like I mentioned earlier, that have been disproportionately hurt by the prohibition of cannabis are actually supported by this new expanded marketplace. So that, again, it's not made up for bigger companies to come to Minnesota and set shop and then exclude Minnesotans. We want to make sure that we have space for our people and certainly that are jobs that are Minnesota jobs and that they're Minnesota companies. So that is the framework. Where we land, of course, is a negotiation with Republicans and other stakeholders. But I would urge that we have that at the center of this marketplace. It's we can't mess this one up from the outset. We have to get it right, and there are ways to do it. Other states have done it. I'm looking at New York and Illinois have been two states that have been lauded on how they've put equity into the framework of legalization. And I think we should not lose sight of that here in Minnesota. I think what's expected of us. And no, I have not heard any other proposals at this point, but I'm sure people will be talking about it, especially in an election year, that we should be asking every Republican where they stand on this issue.
And if I could, I would just like to add that if we recall, and I am sure many of us were here for the work of passage of the medical cannabis program. And we were successful over the objections of a governor and law enforcement. And that was a real challenge for that piece of legislation. Scott Dibble carried that, I believe, in the Senate, and Carly Moline carried that in the Minnesota House. And it was very difficult to get it through, and it is why it was such a conditional program, why there were so many constrictions and conditions, because we were trying to meet and get the signature of a governor who felt very ambivalent and at the outset very opposed to the piece of legislation. If we're successful heading forward with this governor, we'll have a different setup. There will still be opposition, there'll still be powerful opponents, but we won't be facing that same setup. And that should make it easier for us to move forward with the framework that's already set, rather than the constricted program that was passed back in 2014. And it is Governor Dayton's birthday today, and we should all wish him well.
Go ahead, Marcus.
So I'm wondering how the Senate DFL Caucus can partner with the cannabis community to help flip the Senate. Like, which districts are you targeting? Which are the most competitive, vulnerable districts? And how can we help? Like, how can we work together? Because I feel like in some of those districts, you may have people who are independent that you need to get to vote Democrat, but they may not, identify or relate to Democrats. So I think, like, if you got some of us who are not Democrats, but we know that we need y'all to to get legalization done, if you could partner with us to help do some of that outreach, I think it might help.
We thought you never asked. We have a few targeted districts already. One of them, and Senator Murphy can expand as well, but we are waiting for redistricting to happen. So we still don't know exactly where the lines will be drawn, but it'd be no surprise if I told you Senator Limmer's district is at the top of the ticket, at the top of the line, and the biggest obstruction to having anything happen with legalization. So that is the community of Maple Grove. So if you have friends, families, relatives, or if you want to join us, there's already door knockings happening today, in real time already for that campaign, because it's not going to change a ton in terms of the district, and Maple Grove will continue to be part of the district. It might just shrink a little bit with population increasing in the metro. But mid-February is when we'll hear the final lines drawn. But that's one district that we want to make sure we target, and we are targeting. I would say the communities of Rochester, and that's where Alida Baroud, who you have here as well, is running. That district might change its composition, but we know that we are able to flip, and it's changing, and we are able to support it. And frankly, we have communities that has a lot of healthcare and understands cannabis probably better than anyone else, and we can move some votes there too to our side. Those are two specific ones, but we're looking at, depending how things change in the suburbs, we might have other pickup opportunities in the western and eastern suburbs. So stay tuned for those, but I'll start with those two. I don't know if Senator Murphy wants to add any others.
I thank you, Leader Lopez Franson, and you're covering the territory well. In terms of what we're anticipating, and we'll know better after that February 15th date when we see the map. But the other thing I think we should talk about, we don't need to talk about here, is how do we meet our mutual goals? I understand the cannabis parties are going to want to make sure they maintain their major party status, or I'm expecting that. And how is that goal met without undermining our mutual goal of making sure that we are able to win enough DFL seats to put us to a governing majority, so we can move the party, so we can move this policy forward together. That's the strategic conversation that I think members of this group, including Mr. Ford and others, should be, I think, a part of, so that we aren't undermining our shared goal of success in 2023.
Go ahead, Oliver.
Yes, this is when it's appropriate for me to say something, because I started these third parties in 1986. The idea was that historically third parties are the means by which controversial and politically unacceptable ideas are test driven with the electorate. And if you have something like in the 1980s talking about ending drug prohibition, we could not get traction in either of the major political parties. And therefore, since we don't have initiative and referendum, the way to get the issue into the public debate and onto the ballot was to run candidates nominated by petition. That way you can pick your races. The first one we ran was against Skip Humphrey, who was the big DFL drug warrior in his day. We didn't win, but it was an opportunity to begin the dialogue. Now, the obvious fact is that really with the election of Governor Ventura, drug law reform essentially hit the political mainstream, but he could not and did not make any progress on that. So a few years went by. But at this point, the problem is that too much success for the protest vote. Those two parties, of which I'm an active member of one and was a founding member of both, were designed to get protest votes, not to be political parties trying to take over and get people elected to office and be vehicles for egotism and opportunism and corruption and so forth. In 2018, we were too successful. The major parties didn't move fast enough to pick up the issue, I guess. And now anybody with an affidavit and a filing fee can get onto the ballot as a candidate for one of these parties. And as we saw 2 years ago, the fascists, the Trump people, didn't hesitate. They got in there. They were responsible for defeating a House DFLer who was a sponsor of the legalization bill. They were responsible for defeating a senator who was sympathetic. They were, and they jeopardized a number of other seats as well. So there is no solution that I can see except for perhaps looking at some aspects of the election law and seeing if there can be a way to avoid bad faith candidacies. And it's really tricky because you're running into the First Amendment. But I personally want to talk with and work with the the political strategists of the party that is clearly progressive on this issue, and it's progressive on the other important issues that can transcend even the drug war. I've been working since 1968, devoted my entire life to fighting against the injustice of this racist war on drugs. But global warming is more important. The threat to our constitutional democracy is more important. And we have to keep that perspective, all of us, and so I just appreciate the opportunity to be able to make a token support for the DFL Senate campaign and to indicate my own personal point of view about this as we go forward. And I don't know, frankly, what to do about the egotists and opportunists, as I characterize them, much less the deliberate saboteurs and bogus candidates that have filed. I'd be happy to talk to people about it in some other circumstance at any time.
Thank you, Oliver, for that background. And frankly, that explains so much. And it actually is very helpful to how, how do we move forward to bring that to the forefront. And I think it is a major equity issue that we've ignored for way too long. The way I got involved on this as a suburban mom of 2 little kids, I read, I think it was the summer before in 2019, I over the interim, I was reading a long article. I think it was a Times magazine devoted to this issue and all the history of it. And I just came to my senses, is like, why haven't we moved faster on this? I just was mind boggled that we hadn't even tackled it in Minnesota. And that's where I started working with folks in the revisor's office and every single lawyer in the Minnesota Senate to try to put something together to at least start talking about it at the policy level. So thank you for being so outspoken way before, and for your leadership there. And I have some ideas we could probably take offline and how we can work together. So I'm glad we were able to connect here. And I think I want to say thank you for being a visionary way back when.
And we have about 3 minutes left. So I am going to let our senators here or any of our other partners here say a few last words.
I guess I can say a few last words, and then if anybody else wants to jump in, but I just wanted to really say thank you because you've taken time out of your evening to be with us to talk about an important issue that affects, again, every Minnesotan. And whether it's CBD, where you're using some medicinal cannabis for your daily lives, and how, and knowing that we were able to help and getting a framework there is really just the beginning of what we can do together to make sure that people have access to have choices, right? And when we talk about parties of freedom, like this is one of the freedoms we have, to have choices in our lives and what we put in our bodies. And as a mom, again, of two young little boys, I want to make sure that they know what they're putting in their bodies, that they are growing up in an environment where they're educated about issues and about medicinal and other abilities to support themselves. But I know they're going to be exposed to many different substances, and I want to be able to articulate to them what those choices are and be able to have a marketplace, at least for cannabis, where I don't have to worry that what they're putting in their bodies is not going to be harmful or laced with something that can cause their death, which is literally what's happening still in this country. And at the same time, this is a marketplace that we want to make sure that it's accessible to all, and that in Minnesota we have a framework where we put equity at its center, and that we're able to provide licenses to people who can thrive in this market and make a mark here in Minnesota, and an example of a great regulatory framework and responsible framework for years to come. So I look forward to continuing to work with all of you. Maren, I owe you that phone call. And I really always learn something new from you and so many of you who have taught me a lot. And I certainly want to be able to continue to learn and push this to success. I really, when I talk about those things that I would love to do and not to take credit for, but that we are successful and that we were all part of this success at the end when we finally are able to celebrate cannabis legalization in Minnesota. It might be next year or 2 years or 3 or 4, but we're going to get there. I am very confident that we are, with your support and your help. Again, pitching for the Senate DFL, we still need your financial support to get the boots on the ground and the message out. And this is one of the pillars and one of our priorities as we run in 2022 in November, and hopefully are able to successfully take this as one of the biggest priorities when we get into session next year. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.